Alright, this is Sense, and here's my review of the first season of Locke and Key. So Locke and Key Season 1 was a very fun watch. I'd say it was very enjoyable, had some fun characters, a very interesting setting, an interesting history. They don't get into it too much, but it was very interesting. I'd say it's some good humor, some good sad moments as well. I'd say it was a pretty cheesy show, but I mean, I think that adds to the whole appeal and charm of the whole series. I would say, it was shot very well. It had some good editing. Music didn't stand out too much. I liked the main theme, but the rest of it seemed pretty okay. Wasn't too big a fan of some of the songs they picked for it, but I like the songs. I just didn't particularly like it within the context of the episode. And I would say overall, what really stood out to me was the show had some very good ideas, probably from the source material, which I have not read, I will say. Some very good ideas, but some okay execution of those ideas. I kind of say it's kind of like most adaptations of stuff here in the West. Like over in Japan and other countries, they have they have some really good highs and some really low lows, but they have a better grasp of adapting stuff. Over here in Western filmmaking, they tend to just always mess stuff up. But I've not seen what this is about. So I haven't read the original comics, so I do not know how much this is messed up. But given the general track record of anything based off books or comics, it's got to be pretty pale in comparison. So let me just break it down a little bit more. I guess maybe go a little bit character by character. I don't want to really go into entire character arcs throughout this, but I will say there's a lot of little things that stood out to me throughout this season. It's probably not going to be one of the things that most people who criticize the show will say, which is, I'll just jump into that right away, which is characters making dumb decisions. That does not bother me. I've never minded characters making dumb decisions if it seems within their character to make dumb decisions, so to speak. What does bother me is when characters establish something about their personality or something about themselves early on, and then later on either forget or go the exact opposite without a good reason why. Like, typically it is very interesting to have a character set up this way and have them go a different way later on in the season. But you usually have to have a reason. Something happened to them, something within them changed, something happened to change that. I felt like the season, I'll just say, got a little bit off the rails towards the end, in some good ways and in some negative ways. And that negative ways, for the most part, were about the characters. So when it began, it was very interesting to me, in my opinion. It was very interesting the way it started out and the backstory it gave to these characters. And Tyler Locke was one that stood out to me. And the situation they put him in, within the first 2-3 episodes, you were able to figure most of that out. And it was very interesting in the way the actor portrayed it and the way he interacted in most of these situations. I really liked it. I felt like some of it was outside the norm. And then the rest of it was to be expected, but it was still done in a fresh way, in my opinion. It wasn't super fresh for him to be a little self-destructive. That's not... it's to be expected though. So I felt that was okay. And I also felt that I made some of his decisions later on in the story, which may have been considered kind of dumb decisions, to be okay, because we already established right from the first episode, he's a little self-destructive. He does some dumb stuff. So him just making some dumb decisions later on were all excusable for me. What wasn't super excusable was some of it, like I'll probably get into it a little bit more later on, but once you start getting to the midpoint towards the end, it was just a section of time where characters were acting very weird, and I feel like it could have been explained. It could have been in world a lot better, but it kind of wasn't. They just kind of like, here's some stuff happening. There's other reasons why the writers did that, but I will say it's kind of a negative for his character. So he started out pretty strong. Towards the middle, I really was enjoying his way his path was going, and then he kind of seemed lost it, and then the ending 2 episodes were just kind of... I enjoyed them, but they were not really the best. They were a little too focused on, let's wrap up this first season and move on to next season. So those 2 episodes were just, in my opinion, some of the weakest of the show. And so let's move on to Kinsey, another interesting character. The way they introduced her, oh, that was very cool. And then they had her take a step with this backstory. So she's sad, she's scared. Her fear and whatever kind of paralyzed her in a moment where she felt like she should have acted. So she decides to get rid of it. So that was very interesting. They could have gone some very interesting places with that. And every now and then something she did kind of stood out as being, except for that one episode where she took out her fear. And then that episode, sure, she was bolder than normal. But the rest of the show kind of fell to her being this weird in-between where every now and then she was a little bolder than she could have been. But I felt like we didn't have enough time with her to establish this change in her. So it was a little weird in a lot of situations where you're like, wow, she should be bold. Like, this should be a moment we should have really shown that she didn't have any fear. But they didn't. I feel like I just didn't commit to it. So it ended up kind of falling a little bit. The other thing about her character that obviously stood out was her weird love triangle thing they tried setting up, which didn't really work for me. Like, it worked for the episode it was introduced, but it kept dragging out, which was weird. I just did not see anything between her and Gabe. Like, they had some moments, they had some whatever, but it wasn't a, let me ditch the guy who's cool for this guy who I share a couple moments with. I don't know, I didn't specifically feel it felt like were building for something with Scott, and then with Gabe, they were just like, here's just him there. And speaking of Gabe, like, again, maybe I didn't say at the beginning, but I'm not worrying about spoilers in this review. The way they introduced him is just like in most stories, even Knives Out, not to get distracted, but you introduce a character, and the way you introduce them, if later on you try and say they're a good person, if you introduce them as being a negative person right off the bat, they, the way in Knives Out, we had, I believe his name was Randall or Ransom, walk in. He was insulting everybody, which is all fun in games. But we also had dogs barking and snarling at him, which we already established these dogs don't like most people. We established that they like most people, so them not liking him and all this stuff set him up to be a bad person. So throughout all the other events in the movie, it didn't really matter. Like, I already knew he was a bad guy, so it didn't matter. And this was the same kind of way. The way they introduced Gabe into the story, his very first appearance, sure, but him using the key later on, the way that was established, I was like, this guy's not a great guy. And the rest of the season was not really showing that. So I was not surprised when they were like, haha, he was bad all along. I was expecting that twist all along, because I was like, the way you guys introduced him, there's no way he's going to be a nice, normal guy. Also, the actor they picked and the way they styled him and everything, it was pretty clear where it was coming out from there. But there was some good twists to it. I guess I'm being a little scattered, but that was my issue with the 9th episode, was that it was a lot of exposition, a lot of let's go back and rewatch past scenes, but from the other angle. However, we already saw the scene and we already figured out most of this, so we didn't need to re-see some of this footage just from a different angle. And then the other thing is so much of it was just, let's go back and just show what happened behind all this stuff. So it was a little overkill. I feel like they should have been a little bit more nuanced, more interesting. It made episode 9, for the most part, feel kind of a boring exposition fest to me. And then we moved into episode 10, which right off the bat, I was able to guess the twist in that, because, I don't know, whenever you don't show something on screen, it's as much a hint as you showing something on screen. It's just as much information. So they had a lot of not showing stuff on screen during that finale, which made it pretty clear to me what was going on. So I was like, oh, we cut from this scene to this scene. The whole time I was expecting any moment for Dodge to wake up and, I don't know, something to slip or her to say something, whatever, to reveal who she was. I wasn't expecting her to actually chuck her through, so that was like a twist for them to actually chuck her through the door, but I was expecting it the whole time, because the way they shot the episode, the amount of stuff they just kept cutting from, and they just weren't showing enough that I was like, could come to any other conclusion other than, hold up, someone used that key on I'm blanking on her name. I almost called her Nina. Her name's not Nina. I'm 100% blanking her name. There's like Erin and Nina, whatever her character name is. But I was expecting that the whole time, so that was not a twist. The main twist for me was the fact that they decided to have Eden be the one shot with the magic bullet, whatever. I was expecting it to kind of actually be Scott, because the way they the way the whole final couple episodes was wrapped up, it was really strange, the interactions people were having. I know it was all to set up the next season, but it was very strange interactions. So, Logan, his character was introduced pretty early, which was pretty interesting, but then he did a whole lot of nothing, and then he showed up at the end and got told about everything that was happening, and then dropped out again. But originally I was thinking he was going to be the one who'd go down there and get shot, because that would be some direction to take his character, because they hadn't taken him anywhere before that. But that didn't happen. So my second thought was going to be Scott, because it would be a very interesting direction to take his characters, now that he was just dropping out and leaving Gabe there for some reason. I was like, okay, that'd be an interesting direction to take it. I mean, it would be a little weird for her to take him to be evil and evil, but it would have been an interesting direction. But they didn't. I was already sitting there like, why is Eden there to begin with? So that's why she was there, to get the magic bullet. But I just kind of jumped to talk about the final 2 episodes and some of the complaints. I just really liked the first half of the season. I feel like they had a really good direction. Every episode, new key, new mystery, new elements to the story being added. Everything was just building up gradually, felt like it was going somewhere. And then right around the middle of the season, they just hit the go button, which would have been cool if they had everything set up, but they didn't 100% have everything set up. So stuff like when Lucas showed up living in whatever her house, I was a little bit like, that's cool, and I kind of remembered him from Sunday Pictures. I mean, I should have, if I'd binged the whole show, it probably would have been a lot tighter, but because I hadn't, I watched it like consecutively. It was a little bit like some of these connections was like, I feel like I should have gotten some of this earlier. Same thing with what's her name, I can't remember her, with what she had done. We kept seeing her earlier and setting her up to be a bad guy, but the way her character was and the position she was in and the stuff she said, she was clearly not going to be fully bad. So I just feel like we could have just rearrange some of that stuff, had it less of a here's some here's some haymaker twists real quick at the end of the story to get you hooked for next season, just spread those out a little bit better, because some of that stuff just felt like it should have come out earlier. And then I guess I'll just go back to talking about the characters, because Nina was another interesting character. Like, she started out very interesting. She was kind of heart of everything. And just like with Tyler and with Kinsey and everybody else, right around the middle, her story got really weird. I use weird a lot, but it's basically she was investigating, she's doing all these things, but then she doesn't remember magic, doesn't remember whatever, so she was keep getting pieces and couldn't understand it. But we, the audience, could understand it. So it was kind of a moment where instead we're just feeling sad for her, and then we're feeling disjointed because she's investigating this, but then she doesn't know this, so why is she investigating that? Or she's investigating that because of this, and we're just kind of scattered on what she's doing and why she's doing it a lot. We kind of get it, but it's not as easy to fit into her shoes anymore, because she's learning information and losing it, learning it and losing it, and learning more information. And so a lot of it felt more like, so when the other characters learn what she's been up to and they just get all this information they never researched real quick, like Kinsey or whatever, it's like, felt like she learned all that stuff just so the kid characters could quickly swoop through it, because in the end she got sidetracked with detective, don't care about you 1 second, care about you the next. Like, I think I may have missed something in there, but I was not following why I just didn't care for his character at all. And she seemed to be super sidetracked by caring only about him for the final couple episodes. So I don't know. I feel like for her, the whole thing fell apart. Again, this could be coming from the comics, where I feel like I had a definite ending in mind. This season felt like the ending was setting up the next season. So many things were, once you got to the middle, once there was death, once there was the reveal of their dad maybe killing someone, once all that stuff came up, the whole story took a big shift, where instead of before it was focusing on the Locke family and going through each member and what they're going through and how their thoughts are and how they're dealing with whatever. From the middle section, once that happened, we were jumping from character to character to character. Sometimes none of our main characters are there. Like seeing Eden be scared by the fear, Kinsey is cool and all, but it didn't really build on anything. Our main characters started losing screen time. So that's why, like, both Tyler and Kinsey started to feel like they were falling apart towards the end, is we were seeing them make drastic moves and drastic changes and drastic decisions, or they feel drastic anyway to us, the audience. But we were not getting as much screen time with them to figure out why they would make those decisions. So those decisions felt like them just doing random dumb stuff out of the blue. Which, again, some of it I could put together, because I'm like, we've seen these characters through these first so many episodes doing these decisions, and we've already established a degree of not the smartest decision making, so I can kind of put it together in my head. But I think that was just a weakness of the story overall towards the end. It was all became, this big mystery now. Let's all only focus on the mystery. Let's quickly get our characters in position for this twist. Let's quickly get in position for season 2. And so it felt like you lost a lot of our characters' interactions and stuff that were so good in the first half. Bodhi's another same way. In the first half of the season, he's a big character. He's someone you cared about. Well, you may not. It depends on your opinion on child actors and how they do. But then you get towards the middle and all this stuff where it's like, oh, there's a murder. Well, we can't really have the little kid around that. So therefore he falls out. And so by the time he appears in the end and he's all like, let me just run off to my friend's house and let me just do this. Let me give this person the key. Let me do, it's all these stuff where you're like, why are you doing this, kid? And it's because the last so many episodes we've not really been with him. Therefore we're out of his whole bubble. And so we're just like, he's just doing all this stuff. He's just doing things because story needs it. It's like going from character driven to being plot driven. It was like a switch around the middle, which to a degree needed to happen because you had just raised the stakes. So you really need to show what happened around these stakes you just raised. But at the same time, you were losing a lot of the charm, losing a lot of the audience being able to follow along and really feel in a lot of these moments. And I feel like I've seen this in some of the other reviews and stuff I heard from people, is them saying these characters were just doing so many dumb stuff and everything was just so whatever. And I feel like it's because of that transition in the middle. But yeah, that's just my personal opinion on the season and the writing, because again, that would be my main focus. And I guess there's a few more characters I could mention. Lucas was a little too evil, McEvil. I didn't care much for that. He himself as a character felt really flat. Dodge was way more interesting. But she wasn't really ever explained, unless the true form of the bullet, whatever was Dodge. I don't know. None of that felt super well explained. Again, season 2 might wrap it up, but ended up being just a little bit flat. I didn't really care for him much as a villain. Especially once they introduced him into the story, they were really quick to just jump to focusing on Ellie. I'm blanking so hard on it. Is it Ellie? Anyway, they're focusing on her and her. I'm pretty sure it's Ellie. Yeah, they're focused on Ellie and her events, and so much that it's like I wanted to see what the kids were up to. I wanted to see Tyler dealing with more of his stuff. I wanted to see Kinsey better dealing with the fact that she got rid of her feet. I wanted to see, all of that. But we're dealing with all this other stuff, which is cool for setting it up. But I feel like we shouldn't have focused on it as much and stuck with the characters we knew and loved from the beginning. That's mostly it. Like I said, that transition from character-driven, plot-driven didn't do quite as well. It wasn't super character-driven in the beginning. There was keys, there was events and stuff to deal with, but it felt like we're focusing on each character's reaction a lot more. Towards the end, it, in my opinion, scattered way too far, too many things happening. We're not be able to see our character's reaction to these things happening quite as much, and that, I think, hurt it. One other thing I'd like to mention that I really enjoy about this season, which I was not expecting to, was Sam. Sam's terrible. His first introduction was just bad, and then later on, well, not bad, and it was executed poorly, but rather, you just didn't like the guy. He was clearly just terrible. And all the scenes leading up to that, he was just a bad person. You didn't like him. He shows up, he's comedic and, and what's the term, comedically evil or whatever, but he's not a good person. You don't like him. They start to show some of his backstory in his home life. I'm sitting there like, we don't care. He himself doesn't really care. Apparently once he gets in jail, or whatever happens, who knows what happens to his little sister. He introduces his little sister as if it's a reason we should care about him, but he himself doesn't seem to care about her past that one scene she's in. Therefore, I was like, they're doing a terrible job. I don't care about him. That's where I felt the writers did a weak job. It's like, I didn't care about him. They introduced backstory as if they want us to care about him, but that doesn't make us care about him. So I was like, I'm going to be not sad at all when he's gone. But then they managed to pull that last minute twist by those last scenes he had. They were really, I feel like that's the first time we're really anchoring and locking down on who he is and what he wants out of life in those very last couple of scenes with him, which all of a sudden I'm like, I can kind of see that. I can kind of see him wanting this love and this attention, this whatever. again, his earlier scenes, I thought it had a lot more to do with him wanting to protect his family, wanting a regular family, wanting something different. So this was like, okay, I'm kind of seeing it. I still don't care about him. He's a terrible person. He's gonna be gone in 2 seconds. I don't care. And then they had to make him into a ghost, and then I'm like, wow, a sad, ending right there for a character I didn't care about. And somehow they managed to actually pull me into that emotion. I don't know if it's just the music. I am always a sucker for super wide shots of him just floating away while life continues. I don't know. The way they put that together is like, for a character I literally did not care anything about 2 minutes before, I went from that to being like, man, that's sad. I almost wish he could just hang around the background just to see life continue. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's also sad. I just have to say, I feel like they did a nice little turn there at the end. I'm not sure if they intended it that way, because I really did not care about any of his backstory before that. But yeah, that's probably the saddest point of the season for me, and it's for a character I didn't like at all. So well done. I don't know, but anyway, that's my view of Locke and Key. I will probably see season 2 because I enjoyed it. Like I said, it had a lot of cheese, a lot of stuff happening, which was just like, why? But it's part of the whole charm of the show, and I don't know. I'll check out a comic someday and see if that matches up. But I'd give Locke and Key season 1 a 4 out of 5.